Welcome to the You Decide podcast. I'm Dr. Tiffany. We are going to bring you stories of ordinary people who have chosen to live an extraordinary life, outside of their comfort zones and into confidence, possibility, and certainty. You are just one decision away from living your most aligned life, because let's get real, that's what we all want. Welcome to the You Decide podcast, where we chat with extraordinary people living an extraordinary life. Today is all about Danell Phelps, single mama originally from Idaho who decided she wasn't going to settle. Now a small town North Dakota girl who opened her own coffee shop in West Fargo, Ladybug Coffee. We get to get a glimpse of why she did what she did and what she's up to now. 3 things I love about her. She loves coffee. She has the best coffee in town. She's a small town North Dakota gal who became that, didn't start as that, and man, she's brave and has decided to live outside of her comfort zone. Danell, welcome.
Hello.
Hi. That's so exciting.
Yes, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So first of all, I think anybody listening that you were 26 when you moved. No, 26 when you had Josiah.
Yep, I was also 26. It was right before I turned 27 when I moved here.
So from Idaho, he was 1 year old, and you decided you're going to go to Midwest, North Dakota on your own. Can you first tell me what your family thought?
They were not supportive. When I had talked to them about wanting to open up my own coffee stand, they thought that I was going to find something local. And when I had pitched the idea of going to Fargo, North Dakota, they just kind of were shocked and didn't know what to say. They didn't really want to say anything negative, so they just didn't really say anything at all. And so
that's super awesome.
Yeah, so that definitely it made things a little bit more difficult, just because I felt like maybe I wasn't doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. But I was just so determined to do my own thing that I just decided not to care.
Okay, so I really feel like people get stuck in their life based on the expectations of others. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, so how did you just not care? I mean, you cared, of course, but how did you move through that, the risk, I would say, of maybe not having their support, hoping, of course, that they would, but how did you move through that instead of succumb and please them and then risk resentment and all those other emotions?
My desire to go and make something of myself was definitely the most prominent kind of thought in my head while going through all of that. I just was so determined to just make it on my own. And at that time, I was making $500 a month as a nanny and living with my mom and stepdad. And I just was so unhappy with everything. And when I knew I needed to go back to work and get a real job, or, just a better paying job, there were certain things that I knew I didn't want. And what I had always dreamed of was having my own coffee shop. So it was just a dream and a desire that I wanted to pursue because I was so tired of being unhappy.
Oh, this is awesome. Okay. Let's go into coffee, because I don't have a love for coffee like you do. I do not think about where it comes from and where it's roasted and all the different tastes. But I think this is super interesting. You've been a barista, or you were, since you were 19. So, because I think it's so important. We forget when we're in the our comfort zone, or when we're pleasing others, or a lot of what happens is we forget about what we love, right? And we don't, or what we're passionate about, and what makes us come alive, and what creates positive energy, and all those things that happen. Obviously, you knew you loved coffee, and you went back to that. You always wanted your own coffee shop. So can you just, I mean, this is a little bit of just facts on coffee. I think it also gives perspective to us people that get coffee from you every day
Yeah.
as to like the quality that you uphold in your shop at Ladybug. So, and then we'll get into how you actually got here.
Okay. So coffee really only grows around the equator. So I would say most of the coffee plants that are grown are in Central and South America. Some places in Africa do grow beans and harvest and sell and stuff, but so they grow in like little bushes kind of, and the coffee bean itself, so there, if you can imagine what a coffee bean looks like, there's a flat side and a round side, and two of those coffee beans grow together inside of what they call a cherry.
Oh.
So the two flat sides are touching, and then they grow inside of a cherry. And usually the farmers of all the coffee plants they're just family owned, and they literally do everything, but they don't have all of that fancy equipment that a lot of the farmers around here have. So a lot of them will actually go and hand pick the cherries because they have like micro lots, or it kind of depends on different things, but certain coffee roasters will have contracts and stuff with them, and they support the farmers themselves, and they help their operation and anything that they need. So yeah, so it grows, they pick it, and it goes through a machine that it kind of scrubs the fruit part off of the coffee beans. And once it's scrubbed, it's rinsed, and then the majority of the time the coffee beans are laid out on like concrete or outside so that they are sun dried. And then at that point, I think it's like they sit out for like 24 hours, they rake it so that all of it is completely dry, and then it'll go into a bag and then shipped off to the United States usually, or wherever it's going to go.
That's super crazy.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's important to know some of that from us.
Yeah, and it's just, I used to work for a coffee roaster back in Spokane, Washington. His name is Thomas Hammer, and his company is Thomas Hammer Coffee Roasters or Coffee Roastery or whatever. And it was just so inspiring to see his relationship with different farmers that he had that grew coffee for him. And he just had a love for people, but also had a love and passion for coffee as well. But it was just, I mean, he would send gifts for the entire family. And I think that one time he even paid for plane tickets for them to fly into Spokane and see his operation, see how the coffee's roasted. Because most of the time I feel like those farmers, that's just their way of life, and that's just what they do to get by. And they don't see the commercial side of it like how we see it.
Yes.
They don't have little coffee shops that they can just go to and enjoy their own product. They just ship it off and make their money and worry about how they're going to make more money. So.
Wow. Okay. So how did you get here from Idaho as a single mama?
So I, during my time as a barista, I also had usually another job, and I would either be like a server or do other little jobs here and there. And I ended up being I kind of went to school and got a certificate to be a electrocardiogram technician or electrocardiograph technician. And so I worked in the hospital for a year, and I was also barista, and then I got pregnant and I quit the job at the hospital, and then I was a nanny. And when it was time for me to go back to work, I just couldn't get myself to go back to the hospital job. Just long hours, and knowing that Josiah was going to be in daycare for that long, it just broke my heart. I just couldn't do it. So I wanted to be able to spend as much time with him as I could.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked around and I was like, I could go back to coffee. It's what I know. It's what I'm comfortable with. It's an easy, mindless job. Most of the time the shifts are only 4 or 5 hours or 6 hours at a time. So it's not like I would be spending a whole lot of my day doing that. And I could make enough money every coffee shop back home is so busy. So,
okay.
I mean, you would come home with $100 in tips in 5 hours. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was something that I knew that I could do. I felt confident in doing it, but at the same time, there was just something inside of me that kept saying, you're worth more than that. And don't go and make other people rich with your skill and your passion and desire for this kind of business. So I decided, I was like, well, I'll just start looking into buying my own place, seeing what happens. And I started looking, and there was actually a place in Spokane, Washington that I had put in an offer on, and they didn't accept my offer. So I kept looking, and this was about, I would say, mid-July before I moved here.
Mm-hmm.
So from the time that I had decided that I was going to do that until I moved here was probably only 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So it was pretty quick process.
Decisions are easy when they're heart-centered, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was just, I wanted to do something for myself. I wanted to follow my dreams and actually feel accomplished, because up until that point, there wasn't a lot in life that I felt like I actually did a good job doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I felt like I knew how to do well was make coffee. So I was like, well, I'll just figure it out. So I started looking, couldn't find anything in Coeur d'Alene, Spokane. I looked in Missoula, couldn't find anything. And then so I just started the radius from where I was for me looking for a place just started getting bigger and bigger. And my brother had been working out in the oil field. So I was like, well, maybe North Dakota would be a good place. Considered Williston. And I was like, nope, definitely not going to do that. I do not want to live there. And so I just kind of did a general search through Craigslist, and a little coffee shop in West Fargo popped up, and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe that would be perfect. I was like, she pretty much has everything I need, and it's manageable. Like, it's in the range that I was able to afford. And so I called her and talked to her, and she said that she was considering one other person, that the coffee business was very special to her too. And so she didn't want to sell it to somebody who didn't have the heart for it like she did. And so it was right around Josiah's birthday, which is August 4th. He, or his dad and I took him on a little trip. We drove down to Crescent City, California, and we saw the Redwood Forest. And we were driving up the Oregon coast when Angie, she called me back and said, you are the one that I want to sell my business to. She's like, I've been praying about it, and something in my heart tells me that you are the right person for this. And so I was like, oh, that's awesome. I was like, I'm on vacation. There's not really much I can do. I'm going to be home in 4 days. So I just was on cloud nine. And so the entire rest of the way driving back to Idaho from Oregon, I just kept thinking, like, what am I going to name my business? And, like, just starting to think about all the different things, and was just getting so excited. So I came back and I told my mom, I said, I am going to buy a coffee shop. Like, I've been in contact with this lady. We've already kind of worked everything out. All I need to do is send her money. And my mom was like, what? Because I had literally only told her like 2 weeks before that this is what I wanted to do. And I was like, so I just need to find a loan and send her a check. And I mean, in my mind, that's just how simple it seemed to me. Like, oh yeah, I'll just go get a loan. I'll go talk to the bank and they'll just give me the money.
Now it's a bit different, but
yeah, I walk in and they're like, where's this coffee shop? I was like, oh, Fargo, North Dakota. And they're like, what are you doing for work right now? I was like, oh, I'm a nanny. I only make $500 a month. They're like, like, yeah, that's not going to work for us. Like, you don't own a house. You don't have any assets. You still owe $10,000 on your car. Like, no, we're not going to loan you money. So I went and talked to a few different banks, and they pretty much all like slammed the door in my face. And I was just so determined. I was like, nope, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do something. So I talked to my mom again, and I asked her if she would be able to help. And I said, I know that you guys never wanted to co-sign on loans. I know that you don't want to do anything along that line. Like, between the two of them, they have 8 kids. So it would be, it just wouldn't be fair to everybody if they did for one and not the other, but I convinced them. And I think that they, even though they didn't want me to move away and they were so unsure of me, there was something in them that decided that they were going to help me get the money. They took out a line of credit on their home equity line of credit or whatever. And they decided, and I obviously we talked the business side of it and stuff and made sure that it was, they would get some sort of kickback from it too. And
right.
Profit, so everybody would be happy. So, So we got a cashier's check and I sent it through UPS and had it I think there was, I don't even remember quite sure, but I had to have something notarized too in Fargo. So it was kind of stressful to figure it out. And I was like, all right, I just had a lot of faith. I was like, I hope this works out. I'm sending a lot of money through the mail right now and I'm really nervous about it. So I think that was about the second week in August. And so I started looking for a place to live. I found an apartment and I emailed them and got everything set up. So by the time that I had moved here, I would have a place to actually move into.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's amazing.
Yep, so I rented a U-Haul and came over.
Wow.
And so fun fact, when I was crossing the Montana and North Dakota border with all of my stuff moving here, that was literally the first time in my life I had ever stepped foot in North Dakota. So it wasn't even just like I had been here and familiar with the place. Like, no, I hadn't even been in North Dakota. So, and it was funny because I don't remember exactly where it was, but I think it was maybe before Dickinson. There was a viewpoint. And I was like, oh, okay. I've been driving for a while. Let's stop. And I pull over and I'm looking, I'm like, what's the viewpoint? I was like, that's weird. I was like, was there something here before? And it just doesn't exist anymore. They didn't take the sign down. No, it was the hills. People think they're mountains. And I was like, this is weird. This is not, what is this?
Not Idaho.
Nope.
I can see for miles.
Yeah, this is not the Rocky Mountains.
No. So in these last 5 years, what have been the biggest blessings and the biggest challenges?
I would say the biggest blessings have been the loyalty that I have from my customers. And I have never experienced such a strong community or a tight-knit community. Back home, there's a sense of community and people do help each other, but the loyalty that the people have that live here is just astounding to me. Just absolutely incredible. And growing up, I moved around a lot and I had no stability, and we didn't stay in one place more than a year and a half or 2 years. And I didn't know what loyalty even meant. Certain things while I was growing up too, just at some point in my life growing up, every single adult in my life had failed me for whatever reason. And there's a lot of, there's abuse and trauma and all of that stuff. And so I felt alone. And, so this is really the first time in my life where I've ever felt loyalty and stability and just really anything like that.
That's amazing. The feeling behind the business, right? Sometimes, we see things as a sign and a business name, and we forget that the human is behind it that busted through barriers and people to get to that point, That's amazing. How about the challenges?
The
single
challenges.
mama.
Oh gosh.
First bullet point, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, Josiah was 1 when we got here, and It was probably a good 6 weeks of being in contact with the city of West Fargo and trying to secure a location that I was even going to put this coffee stand. And I had no idea what was going to happen. I knew nothing about business. The guy that actually moved the coffee stand and was storing it for me, I had never even met. I still, like 6 weeks after moving here, I still hadn't even seen it. So I started to panic and I was like, oh my gosh, what if I got ripped off? What if I sent her this money and she actually sold it to somebody else and I literally have nothing? Mm-hmm. And I just started panicking and I couldn't get a hold of the guy. I would try to leave messages. His voicemail was full. I would send him text messages. I called his business phone. I called his wife and nobody would get back to me. And it was like 2 weeks of trying to contact them every single day. And it was like nothing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I actually talked to one of my friends back home and he said, well, do you want me to try to call? I can be scary and, make him think that he's, going to have a lawsuit or something,
Right.
So he actually called and talked to his wife and pretended to be a lawyer from back home representing me and threatened to take legal action if he didn't tell me the address of where my building was being stored. So
yeah.
So anyways, I kind of got
challenge number
distracted.
one.
Challenge number one was just
that's what we learn about business that we don't necessarily know, right? We think it's about serving the product and it's so much more.
Oh yeah.
Serving
the product. Just getting the building to where it is right now. And at first when I first found out about the spot and I started talking to the guy that I leased from, I was just so unsure. I have a really hard time making decisions anyway. So it was like, is this going to be the right spot? It's not like the most, it doesn't really stand out. I don't have I'm not really super going to be super close to the road. Like it's kind of a busy place. It's like, I don't know. So, but it was the only place. And I was like, well, I guess it's just now or never, and got it placed. And then by this time it was the 1st of November and I needed power dug into that spot. And every single place that I had called, I probably called like 4 or 5 different places. They're like, yeah, sorry, we're booked up for the year. I'm like, what do you mean you're booked up for the year? Like, all you have to do is like hook up the electricity. They're like, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And it's freezing. So they're like, we don't have much time before the ground freezes. And I'm thinking like, what? Like, you have big machines. Why can't you just dig through it? That was just the naive me not knowing how cold it actually gets here.
I was going to say, because it was your first winter in North.
Yeah, my first winter. So we finally got the electricity figured out, and I'm thinking like, okay, I'll just repaint the walls and kind of move things around and get things set up, start ordering stuff. And I go in and I rip there was like this backsplash, but it went 3/4 of the way up the wall. I ripped it off because I didn't like it, and all the walls were red on the inside, and I just couldn't do that. So I ripped it off, and there's mold in the drywall all the way around.
Goodness.
And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. So I'm like, what do I do? And it was to the point, it's not like one little spot of mold. It was just the entire bottom was just covered in mold. And I was like, this is not good. So I decided, I was like, well, I'll just replace the drywall. Like, how hard could it be? And being that I didn't have a lot of money to spend, I decided to do it myself. So ripped out all of the drywall, and I had my brother come over 1 or 2 weekends to help me just get product to the place and like help me hang a couple pieces that I was having a hard time doing. But literally pretty much everything else. I put down new vinyl flooring and did the drywall and painted and built a countertop. And by that time, it was already into December because I had no idea how long this kind of stuff takes. And I didn't know if I was doing it right or what. And so it was December 22nd that I finally was able to start making money. And of course, you know, at this point, like there's so many things that set you back and so many disappointments and so many, you know, you have no idea what's going to happen. And I knew nobody.
Right.
So it was like, how am I going to find customers? But I was so confident in myself that the failure wasn't even really an option for
Mhm.
me. I was like, I'm just going to do it, and then I'm going to do a good job, and that's it. So,
Awesome.
yeah. And then, of course, Josiah did go to daycare Monday through Friday, but on the weekends, I brought him with me for the first year and a half that I was open. So every Saturday and Sunday, I mean, I was the only person working there. I didn't have any employees for the first year and a half. So
Right.
I worked 7 days a week and brought him to work with me on the weekends, and I just made it work.
Yep.
So I would say the challenge I'd say the biggest challenge was just figuring out how it was going to work, and then also making it work with having nobody else to help me. Just
Mm-hmm.
having to do it all on my own and figuring out childcare. I couldn't afford at that time to send him or find a babysitter to watch him on the weekends.
Right.
So
Well,
I
it's
just
super
did what I had to
interesting
do.
because so many people get stuck in the how, because what you just said, I didn't know anything about the how, and that's what held you up, yet it never stopped you. And I think so many people, it's the limiting belief of not being able to move forward because we don't know how. When the desire is great enough that you just said,
Yeah.
you will figure out the how and you'll just walk through it just like you did, right?
Yep.
If you would have known all these things, so many people will say when they're going through this struggle, perhaps, if they would have known it all, they maybe wouldn't have gone through it. But once the desire is big enough to take one step, take another step,
Yep.
and you figure out the how as you go instead of thinking you need to know that before you take action, I think that's one of the most admirable things that can help people is that figure out the desire first and
Yep.
go get it, because the how just works. When the desire is great enough, the how always just works. Doesn't mean it's easy.
Yep. Yep. And if the desire and the passion isn't there, then sometimes I feel like that's where people do feel like they fail, is because they just don't have not even the strength, but maybe the ambition to keep going when times do get tough. You know,
Absolutely.
they're like, well, it's not worth it to me. So then they just give up. And it's just, at that point, I feel like, how could you just give up? You've made it this far, and you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's just, is it this something that you really love to do? And some people are just like, nope, I don't really care. I just want to make money.
Yep. 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 Or whatever their motive is.
Yep.
It's not
Yep.
coming from the inside. It's externally driven. And so when
Yes.
we're not intrinsically motivated or that desire isn't coming from our heart, then something will always stop us in that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I think one of the big desires for me was just being able to have something of my own,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, I had always just lived with other people, and I didn't have anything to myself. Nothing. I mean, there was literally nothing of mine.
Wow.
Besides, I financed a car and that was it. But I mean, that's not really a big accomplishment in my eyes. So
Mm-hmm.
just being able to have something of my own where I could do what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, just made me feel powerful. And that was also another feeling that I haven't really had before. And just being able, the confidence to do my own thing. And a lot of it was also like, oh, look at me, you know, all the people that didn't ever think I was going to be able to make anything of myself, and all the people that didn't think that I was going to be successful, or you
Mm-hmm.
know, anything. And I remember there was a guy I dated. He was my high school sweetheart, I guess. We dated for 7 years, and I always remember him making fun of the people that had moved away and only were gone for maybe a year or two, and they ended up coming back. And I just remember it just like burned in my brain, him making fun of these people for trying, like saying, oh, I'm going to leave, I don't like it here, I'm going to go make something of myself in another place. And they go and it doesn't work out and they move back, and he was like, oh, they failed, like they couldn't do it and they weren't strong enough. And I just remember thinking, like, how in the world can you make fun of somebody for trying?
Right.
And so part of it was, that was also something, was like, I'm out here to prove to other people as well, which is honestly probably another challenge that I had to work through myself, because it's like, I'm not doing this for other people, I'm doing it for myself.
Yep.
And figuring out like how to get those negative thoughts out of my head so I can be in a good space just in myself and be confident and happy for everything that I've accomplished for myself.
Absolutely. So I think anybody who has been to Ladybug, the first thing, besides great coffee, the one identity that you have is you write little notes on the top of the coffee.
Yes.
Best thing ever. Where did that come from, or what is the reason? Like, what was that driver? Because that is definitely one of your identities. I hear all the time, that coffee shop that they write feel good stuff on. Yeah, that's Ladybug. That's Danell.
Yeah. I actually can't take credit for that. I borrowed the idea from a lady that I had worked for. She owned a little coffee stand called the Coffee Cottage in Post Falls, Idaho. And we always had to write on the lids. And I'm not even entirely sure where she came up with the idea, but she was a very business-minded person, and she had a lot of great ideas that I actually kind of implemented into my own business. And that was the one thing about her business that stood out from everybody else. And that's what I wanted too. But because when you're opening up a business in a place that has competition, you want to be able to stand out and make a name for yourself and not just blend in and be just like everybody else. And that's how I've been my entire life. Was I want to be me, and I don't want to be like anybody else. And I have 2 younger sisters, so if they tried copying me, like, I hated it. It's like, no, be your own person. Like, stop trying to be me,
Right.
So if I saw anybody wearing the same kind of shirt that I had, I stopped wearing that shirt because I didn't want to be like anybody else. So that was part of it. I was just like, I want to be like nobody else. But the one thing that I absolutely love the most is the joy, and I guess, mostly the joy that it gives the customers. And it always seems to bring a smile to somebody's face when they read it. And it really, hits them. And they're like, wow, I really needed this today. Mm-hmm. And I have always been a very encouraging person, very optimistic. I always try to see the best in everybody and everything. And it kind of is, I don't know, it's kind of a weakness at the same time, but not. But
not a weakness, no. It's a boundary thing, right? So
yeah. So sometimes I feel like I shouldn't say it's a weakness. I should say it's kind of a soft spot in my personality, where if somebody was trying to take advantage of me, that's how they would be able to get to it.
Right.
So.
Which is a boundary thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
That's a you thing. Not a
yep.
them.
Yes. Yeah. Which I have, I've always trying to improve on that.
Yeah.
But so anyways, the lids.
And that's what so many times I would message you. I'm like, oh my God. Well, if the 4 of us are in a car, we all figure out what lid represents us. And you always say, well, the lid picks you.
Yes, oh, bitch. Yes.
Oh, right. It's not the lid that I want the most today, but the lid that picks me to give me that, the word of the day, the thought of the day, the opportunity to change somebody's perspective for that moment. And so many times the moment travels into the day. It's just amazing how when we spend time with the right people, when we are doing the things that we love, like how much that actually changes our body, our brain. And a little note like that is proof that it doesn't take much to shift.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yeah. And people always ask me too, like, oh, do you actually write these? They're handwritten notes on the lids. And I said, yeah, we take the time and write on them beforehand, and we just have them up here.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that are just completely blown away by it. And I think that it just helps them feel, it just makes them feel special.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this is really genuine, and just so nice. There have been a few people who have come through, and they would read the lid and they would just start crying. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It just, this lid really resonates with me today, and I really needed to read this, and I'm having such a hard time, and it also opens up a chance to get to know your customers too. And that's what I really enjoy doing. I like making that connection with people, and I like being able to help people as well. So that's the part of it that I get, find joy in, is being able to help other people.
That's amazing. So as we wrap, what would you say to somebody looking to make a leap like you did? One that they wanted to do something or feel something that was their own, that they could feel powerful and confident and all those things that you said, loyalty, stability, all those, if they were to write, because that's what people want, right? That is what we want. So many people get stuck in how to get it, but what would you say to them so that they have confidence maybe to step out of that comfort zone and take the first step?
Oh, I would probably say that what is there to lose in trying? Don't let other people's opinion affect don't let other people's opinion affect the choices that you make for yourself. And if it's something that you are passionate about, something that you desire to have, how is trying, just trying and seeing and testing the waters and seeing how it would work out for you, how is that going to put you in a worse place than you are right now? Because I feel like resentment and regret is something that people are obviously, they're afraid of, and they're like, oh, what if it doesn't work out? Fear of failure is hard, but I think that regret is worse than failing, because you would at least know that you tried everything you could to make it work. And if it doesn't work, then I feel like, maybe it wasn't meant to be, or maybe something else will come along, or maybe it was just, it helped you learn some life lessons and helps you build your character into something better for yourself. But just try, just go out and do it for yourself, and don't think about what other people are going to think of you, and focus on how it's going to help you. And if it helps you in a way where, like for myself, if I am better today than I was yesterday, then I don't feel like it was a failure at all, and it was totally worth it. So I don't know, I guess.
I love it. Yep. That is perfect. Better today than yesterday.
Yes.
That's amazing, because so many times we're looking up that mountain, looking at where we're going, and we forget to look how far we've gone. and we
Yes.
see things as mistakes or failures instead of lessons, right?
Yes.
And so to be able to look back and see how far we've gone, what we've learned in the process, and never to stop at the how, but just to keep going to where you're going, being grateful for where you came from. I think you're a perfect example of that. This is awesome. The story behind Ladybug. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm proud of you. That's
thank you.
sometimes we don't hear acknowledgement from other people or
Yeah.
we don't listen to it, or we don't, or whatever the case may be, but you're doing amazing things, just so you know, even if
Thank
nobody's
you.
saying it out loud or watching.
Yeah. Yeah. Though, and the one thing that I struggle with the most, though, I do have to admit, is comparing myself to other people. And especially with there being so many coffee stands back home and so many of my friends that own businesses back home, and seeing what they do. And it's just, I sometimes get caught up in it, and I just have to take a step back and think, like, you can't compare your journey with somebody else's, because nobody really knows what you have gone through to get to where you are.
Absolutely.
And every single person's journey is special in its own way. And I don't think that it's comparable.
Nope. And I think it's natural. I love that you said that, because it's common, it's natural, it's somewhat normal to see it. Now it's to know that we are aware in our body, to know when we're doing it, right? So
Yep.
to know our triggers, to know that, like, oh gosh, come on, this is
Right. Especially in the age
anything.
of social media, it's so easy to get caught up. You just
Oh,
be like, oh, I wonder how this person's doing, or I wonder how this person's business is doing. And so you just go down the rabbit hole, and you come out feeling, you don't feel like you've accomplished enough, or you don't feel like you're doing well enough, or you don't have as many likes on your page as they do. And so then you think, like, oh my gosh, I'm failing. But it's just, and I think that everybody does that, but social media just makes it so much harder,
yep. We
because
have to,
you just have to actively and consciously tell yourself, like, I cannot compare myself to another person's journey.
Yep, absolutely. And I think the key is awareness in that. Without awareness, we're stuck in other people's lives. So
Yep.
being aware of even all the powerful words that you just said, I have them written down: powerful, confident, loyal, desire, stability, stand out, don't blend in. Those are not found in comparing. And so when you feel like you're starting to have the opposite of what those powerful words are to you, then you know that you are comparing your journey to somebody else's. So
Yes.
Understanding what the triggers are, who the triggers are. If it's social media, set limits.
Mm-hmm.
Don't like certain pages. I mean, it just more so preserving our heart many times. So that doesn't mean you're avoiding. So many people will be like, well, if I can't handle that, like, no, it's about setting your own boundary. You got to set your own boundary to know when you start to go down that rabbit hole, stop. That is the trigger for you happens way before that. That's just the action now that you're in, so
Yes.
being aware of how you're feeling and why you would even be interested in what they're doing. That's the biggest thing. I think that's really important, because so many people see these stories, or any story, or like you said, a shingle, a sign, a business, as like, she's got it all figured out. How does she have this now? Instead of being able to listen to a story of how you got there, and you're not there yet. You're continuing to get better. And, but from their perspective, because that's what they're doing, is comparing.
Yes.
You have it all, right?
Right.
And so that's not what it is. I think it's really important to bring to light some of these dark things that can hold us back if we're not aware enough to push through.
Yep.
Amazing. You're doing awesome work, and we're glad to have you in North Dakota.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I know.
This summer was the first summer that I didn't feel like I was going to drown in the humidity. So that was
Amazing.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm acclimating.
Yeah. 5 years.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I always
Okay.
tell everybody back home, like, oh, it's not that bad.
Just don't come from December to April. Then
That's
it's
true.
not that bad.
Yeah.
All right, Danell, thank you. Thanks for sharing your story. Can't wait to see where your path leads from here.
Yes, me too.
Thank you so much for listening and being willing to go all in. Ditch the excuses and the comfort zones and make a decision that nothing can stop you. You can find the show notes below, and I'd love for you to share, subscribe, and rate this podcast, but only if you love it.